You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmeyer, right here on LA Talk Radio.
We're getting ready to make a phone call to somebody who's actually been very instrumental to some of the landmark movies of the past. He has been Stanley Kubrick's right-hand man for over 30 years, up until obviously Stanley passed. He now runs the Stanley Kubrick Archives over at Warner Brothers. He was one of the producers on the Academy Award-nominated Little Children. He cast the little boy in The Shining, and he's an all-around exciting guy to talk to, and we're going to call him up right now.
Hello?
Hi, Leon.
Yeah.
It's Ethan here with Combat Radio. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'm excited to talk to you.
Okay.
I've got Loda Hadley here.
Hi, Leon. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Lotta?
Fine.
I know you guys have been talking a lot recently to make this happen, and we actually, before we jumped on the phone with you, Leon, you're live, by the way.
Right.
We were talking a little bit about your ever-impressive resume, but I left out some of the highlights because I think we'll want to get to that in a conversational point. But I had talked about your history with Stanley Kubrick and how many of our audiences, many people in our audience actually think that you are the reason he had all that success, that it had nothing to do with him, that it was actually you who...
That's so right.
That you had to pull Stanley aside and say, Stanley, we really need a big wheel shot in this movie somewhere. It's a big hotel. We need a big wheel shot. Loda was telling me, and I hope you don't mind if I just jump right to this, but Loda was telling me that you were. Well, I guess let's start here. This would be probably the better place for me. How did you meet Kubrick? And how did you come to work with him for so long? Because he trusted you for so long on so many things.
Well, I was an actor. I went to drama school and was trained as an actor in London. And I just went to an audition for Barry Lyndon. It was strange because I'd just left drama school when I saw 2001, and I was just totally so impressed with it and blown away. And, what impressed me most was that, here was a film, and for the first 20 minutes there hadn't been a word of dialogue, but, you were following a story, and it was so, wonderfully told and beautifully photographed, of course. And then after that, while I was actually working as an actor, I saw Clockwork Orange, and it just absolutely appealed to me in such a huge way, because at drama school, you're kind of taught, well, in my drama school anyway, we worked a lot with improvisation, a lot, and also, how to find a character through improvisation. And it seemed to me all the performances were so broad, so big, and I just loved that. It seemed such a hybrid between film and theater somehow. And I just turned to the person who I was watching the film with, and I just said, I just got to work for that person. And while I was on another film somewhere in Ireland, actually, I heard about auditions for Barry Lyndon. And so my agent, sent in my CV and my photograph, and I went for an audition, thinking that it was like every audition that was ever held in England at that time for film, where you sit down with a producer and a director maybe, and they look at your photograph and they say yes or no or maybe on the spot. But it wasn't like that. It was the first time I'd ever done a video audition. You've got to remember, this is like 1973. It was reel-to-reel video in those days, so it was very, very primitive. But he was using them, and I didn't get to meet Stanley. I did 2 auditions on video, and I didn't actually get to meet Stanley until I went down to the location, which was in Salisbury in England. And he just tapped me on the arm when I was hanging around in the hotel, wondering what was going on, and just introduced himself very quietly. Hi, Leon. Yeah, I'm Stanley. And it was just like that. And we started talking, and that's how I met him. And it was another 2 months before I actually got on set to shoot anything. And he had a peculiar way of working in that way, because he had me called and full makeup and costume and everything, but I would just sit outside the set and just stew, basically. And so it 2 months before we actually met on the set.
Now, how long was that shoot? Because that's an epic movie.
Well, they started shooting in, I think, in the late summer in Ireland. And I was waiting for the call because everyone assumed that the whole thing was going to be shot in Ireland, you know? Mm-hmm. And, you know, it just went on and on and on. And it was only in the end of January that I finally got a call. And then I found out subsequently that they'd left Ireland. And the, you know, ostensible reason for leaving Ireland was because the safe in the production office had been blown and they'd been given a warning letter by the IRA that they had to get out of Ireland. And so that was, you know, basically the reason why they shifted and moved location back to England.
Well, you got to appreciate the IRA's agenda at the time to say, we're going to make a statement by forcing the Stanley Kubrick production off of our island.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure they made hay with that one. Really do. But I had a contract. My contract originally, see, was for... it was for 13 shooting days over 8 weeks. And so when I went down in January, I only thought I'd be there till March. But in the end, I was there till the end of August. And, you know, I only had one big scene and a couple of small scenes to establish a character when I first went down there. By the time we'd finished, he'd written a whole bunch of scenes for me and just kept me there till the end of the movie.
And if our audience is wondering, those who've seen the movie, Leon wraps it up by blasting Ryan O'Neal in the leg, which is later amputated because of the shot.
Amputated, yes.
Way to get it done. Way to get it done. So that's really where you started, because when I first met you the first time, I was struck by how young you were to have such a history with such a prolific filmmaker, and now it makes perfect sense. And at that point, I guess, after Barry Lyndon, Stanley says, you know, I like this guy. This guy's agreeable and he's smart. Maybe I should hire him. Is that how it went down, or how did it work?
Well, I think, you know, with Stanley, everything happened on an emotional level. I mean, you know, he was a complicated guy, as I'm sure you can understand. But, you know, he would allow me to come on the set and just watch what was going on, which may not sound much, but when you realize that Stanley was the kind of person, if you had no business on the set, no work on the set, everyone stay away, and that included, you know, Warner Brothers executives and people on his own staff. So, you know, it was incredibly illuminating just to sit in a set, and he allowed me to. I could ask him anything I wanted. I mean, I could ask him about why he was doing a particular lighting setup, and I just got so interested in it. And by the end of the production, you know, I was telling him that, you know, I was kind of getting more interested in how you make the pictures than actually being in them. And that's what he remembered. And so when he was going into production for The Shining, I was living in Stockholm in Sweden at that time, and I just got a book through the post, just a little brief note saying, read this. And so I read it, and 2 days later he called me, and it was The Shining, and he said, would you like to work on this? And I said, yes, I would. And that's how it really sort of kicked, and that's when I really started working for him, you know, on the production side.
I was going to say, one of my all-time favorite actors is in Barry Lyndon, and I hope you're not going to tell me he was a prick, but if you do, I guess it's okay, because his career is pretty much into retirement, which is Hardy Kruger.
Hardy Kruger. Now, I only met Hardy Kruger sort of socially while he came in to shoot a scene. There's a scene where, you know, he's flattened under the beam when they're fighting a battle. He was actually a very, very nice man, I found.
Yeah.
You speak as you find. I never found him anything but, you know, a really nice man, an interesting man, and you know, as you'd expect, a pretty erudite kind of guy.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Leon.
No, go on.
No, I was going to say, I actually, for a movie I had written and was producing a couple years back, tried to hire him, and I contacted his Los Angeles-based representation, and the manager goes, you know, I haven't spoken to Hardy in years. Like he just kind of wandered off into the sunset, you know. But he was. I remember watching Barry Lyndon say, "Man, this is one of my favorite." But prior to Barry Lyndon, but you know, this movie alone, just because it has Kruger in it, was great.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of think he belonged to a kind of generation of European actors like Max von Sydow. They're kind of the same time frame, where the work they've done, and which is encompass stage and film equally. They just have a strength that they don't have to cook anything. They're just there, and they're wonderful people to look at, let alone their acting abilities. But they just have some kind of thing about them that makes them strong, appear strong on screen. But he must have been quite old by the time he got to it. I would have thought.
Yeah, he might have been. I don't know. I seem to remember so many strong performances of his in that time period, like from 75 to basically 82. But it's not.
Right.
It's not about Hardy until he calls me back. It's more about you and your work. And one of the things you said you got the book The Shining in the mail. He said, "Would you like to work on this?" And of course, you probably didn't need long to think about that.
No, not at all.
At the time, he didn't put in the note though that you would all be stuck in a snowstorm up in the Rockies for several months together, did he? Or what were the?
Well, no. What he wanted me to do, the first thing he asked me was, what do you think of it? And I said, well, it was a great story. It really was. And so he said, well, with the biggest task here is going to be to find the little boy. So what I want you to do is to go to, the States and to find a little boy. And so they set up a whole sort of network inside Colorado and Kansas and Illinois. So I went to Denver and Chicago and Kansas City. And over a period of 6 months, I saw 4,000 little boys for that role. I mean, incredible number of children that came from everywhere, I can't tell you. Mm-hmm. And I know that he was holding sort of parallel auditions here in Hollywood at the same time, looking for him. But I found this little boy in Chicago. His name was Danny Lloyd. And the reason why Stanley wanted me to do that was because he wanted me to work with them, kind of improvise sort of scene setup. So I would talk to them on camera and interview them on camera, see how comfortable they were on their own. And then if they looked like there was a possibility, I'd get them back and do half-hour improvisation sessions with them using, situations from the actual script and just see how they shaped up that way. And Danny Lloyd was the guy who, we found. I found him quite early on, actually, but we were always looking for a backup in case anything went wrong. Because Danny was he was just 4 years old when I met him.
What's that guy doing now?
He's a teacher.
Yeah, that's what I
apparently. I haven't spoken to them in years. We had an email contact, sort of flurry of them, a few years ago. But he's a teacher, and I'm not sure where he is now. But he's very happy as a teacher too.
Right, apparently. Right. Well, that must have been a fantastic movie to work on. I mean, I can't imagine what it was like working with that cast, especially because Nicholson has the reputation he does. Did you like working with him? Was he easy to work with?
Oh, yeah, and the crew loved him. The crew absolutely loved him. He was just one of those guys who kind of, I think everyone felt like, he didn't think of himself as anything, more important, that he knew he had a talent, but, that was it. It wasn't that he elevated himself above anybody else. He didn't feel the need to sort of be addressed in any particular way other than Jack. And that's what people liked about him. He really, and he was so adaptable and amenable to, the way Stanley was working, because Stanley worked in a rather particular way. It wasn't 2 takes and done. It was sometimes multi takes, and all day on a scene, and some day not even turning over, because we couldn't get the lighting right or something. Just this forbearance that he had for it all, it was just terrific. And Stanley really appreciated it, of course.
I have to tell you, just as a doing over the course of doing some research on that movie some time back, I was watching some behind-the-scenes footage that was shot, I guess, by Stanley's daughter at the time.
That's right. Yeah, Vivian. Yes.
You just see him just like barking at Duvall, saying it's 20 below out here. Get back on your mark. Just like that kind of like volatile of sort of I guess direction that directors sometimes give when all the elements are bearing down.
Well, I can tell you about that because I was inside that when that whole incident occurred, and it was just a complete jumble of mixed messages coming, down from Stanley, like Chinese whispers. By the time it reached her and the cue to go out of the door, it was coming on. It was coming, wait, from like a fourth person in the chain, and it wasn't at all what Stanley was, telling her to do. In the end, as you see from that scene where he's screaming at her, I felt so bad for her. I mean, she really didn't kind of warrant that because it wasn't her fault. It really wasn't.
Well, the things an actress goes through, the things the actress goes through on behalf of a performance, right?
Yes, I think Shelley said it when she said, she understood it was a means to an end, but she wouldn't want to go through it again.
Right.
I understand that because it's very hard for 6 months, She had to run around and be in this constant state of anxiety and hypertension, It's a long haul. It really is to stay in that state.
And Jack gets to say, hey, most of my scenes are downstairs in the bar. You get to run through the building screaming bloody murder for 6 months. Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmeyer, right here on LA Talk Radio.